Hey, welcome to In the Chute. This is where Kalen gives me some subject to pontificate on. So go ahead, Kalen, let me pontificate.
Separating, managing different herds. So it's easy to separate and manage the horses and the cows. They look a little bit different. But when you're dealing with the cows, you have on some years anywhere between 3 to 4 separate herds that you're managing. How do you separate them? What's the rhyme or reason behind it? And then how do you manage them accordingly?
Well, it's kind of based on what's the best for them. I mean, some of them is pasture. Can only put so many animals on a pasture, so you split them up into different pastures. And when we're typically doing that, it's summertime, and so we got the opportunity to breed some animals up. And you don't want to put a large bull or the heavy birth weight bull with heifers typically. So we have heifer bulls, with the little lighter EPDs, I think we've talked about in the past, and separate those out so you only have heifers or some of the other cows that will, smaller cows fit in with that group, little smaller body type, and keep them isolated so that those bulls will only breed those heifers, and that way you don't have as many calving problems. Pulling calves, too big of calves for a small statured heifer that has never had a calf and is frankly kind of stupid about it a lot of times. Yeah, they just don't know. And then once they've had a calf, then the next year, or you as you call some of your older cows out, they can be moved into the herd that has a larger birth weight bull, a little heavier bull, and they can stand up to that bull and then have that calf with a little less problems or a lot greater calving ease. And we don't choose bulls that are overly large anyway. I don't want a
Right.
giant, a really huge calf out of even our older seasoned cows. So it's about managing pasture and generally managing what kind of bulls we're using on those animals for our calving time. So you're thinking ahead about, will this one work? Will that one not work? And just doing it that way. It's those two things together.
What's been the best system or process you've used to actually manage those like on paper?
Well, keep track of their ages. I kind of know
Right.
by ear tag, and I know what years what animals were there. And of course, you're just looking at, if you can't tell the difference between a heifer, even a 2-year-old heifer and a cow, maybe you should go raising chickens. I mean, it's you just know your animals and know which ones have calved, and we keep records. You have to keep records, I think, is a smart way to do that, because 2 years ago I can't remember what an individual cow did unless it was something remarkable. Like we got one cow that's had multiple sets of twins over years. I know that cow well. So I can take a look at her. I can look at her hind end and I can tell because she's got a little kink in her tail. So you get to know your cattle, and everybody does. So we just run them by an age class. We know who's doing what, who's had what calves, um, and how many calves generally are about that number, based on the ear tag numbers. So I try to tag them so we've got a system in place to know about when they calved or what class they're with. And where you have a small enough herd, it's easy for us to do that. It's not much of a problem. I think some of the bigger places you may have, 200 head of heifers or 300 head of heifers if you got a good sized place, which would be, God, I can't imagine calving all of those by yourself. I mean, they got crews to do that. You got night calvers, and so they spread it out, and people are doing that. They're hired to do that. So um, it's the same system, really. You're keeping specific bulls with those animals. You just have more of them, and then covering whatever grass you can. And we've gotten some good moisture this year. Our place looks like crap because of uh,
The mud.
the well, no, I mean I'm talking drought and
Oh yeah.
grasshoppers. So our grass is short. We've been supplementing with hay, which is a gamble, because I'm hoping we're going to get some good moisture, and we'll get some grass back, and we'll probably still, even with that, have to uh, call a little bit deeper than we want to. But that's the way it is. You gotta you got to take care of that grass, you got to take care of that ground, and you do that by managing your herds.
The other part is the separation piece. So yeah, you're managing different herds, but at certain times of the year, they all come together. Like right now, when they're calving, like everybody's pretty much together. What's the best, probably most efficient process for separating the herds and getting them in their own subsets so that you can push them or direct them to whatever pasture that they need to go?
Well, normally what we do is we calve in what I call a calving pasture. Um, and I feed up there and have all of the calvy cows uh, up there where we can kind of keep an eye on them. They calve. I check them, multiple times a day. And these are all cows that have had calves, so they're not heifers. And so they don't need much assistance, but you keep an eye on it in case something's wrong. You got a backwards calf and they're just not coming out, or a leg back, something like that, where you can go up there with a horse, or like your mom with a side by side, and push them down into the corral, and then do what you need to do to help them, assist them along. But as those cows calve, I will give them, I'll try to tag those calves fairly early, and I usually do it honestly with a side by side. Mom goes with me a lot, and we'll tag and band the bulls and uh, turn them loose, and then I'll give them a couple of days to really get their bearings and their sea legs, and really get a good bond with that cow. And honestly, it's for that the calf having the ability to really move. If they're close to a gate that goes into the other pasture, that well pasture that's adjacent to it, then I'll kick those pairs out, and I'll do that generally horseback, and push them out, get them through the gate, so that I don't have a whole bunch of cows and calves on the ground where I'm calving, and I kind of keep track of how many pairs that I have calved. And if I've got, 3 or 4 calves that I haven't moved out, I know I've got that. Anything more than that's got to be a new calf. So I just keep separating those, and then the heifers, they start out there too. And any butcher steers that we have, we just run those out there as well, segregated from the calvy cows. And it means feeding in 2 different spots, but that's all right. I mean, big deal. It makes it much easier to be able to just take a quick look, and take a set of binoculars to kind of the end of one parts of the pasture, and move around, and just go ride through them with horseback, and see what you've got. So then eventually, when those cows are all done calving, they're all together again, just like they were before they started calving. And then we, at branding time, I have a list of who I want to go to what pasture, and then we are literally separating the calves and the cows in 2 different groups. And as that calf comes off that calf table, we're sending them one direction or the other, so that we can pair those cows and calves back up, and then go to summer pasture with some of them on a lease, and some of them stay home or go out to other leases, and go to different parts of the ranch that will best suit them for a couple of months, and keep moving them around.
Yeah. I mean, the way you design the corrals in the first place helps a lot. I remember the old school way we used to do it, and it was a pain. But
Yeah,
after some money and design work and some planning, it's paying off.
don't discount the time and effort we put into it too.
Oh yeah, it
But
was
no,
nice because you know what? I didn't have to put very much effort into it. I just
yeah, I
watched it
know.
from a distance.
Pretty bad when a guy wants to go to Afghanistan so he can get out of work.
Hey, you know what? It works sometimes. Okay.
Yeah, so but it's just planning, really, and thinking about what you want to go where, and then being able to make it happen, and good equipment, good corrals. I mean, we don't have the best corrals. I mean, there are some that have a lot better, like overhead pipes, the
Yeah.
top of the rails. We don't have that. It's, we're kind of poor boying it a little bit, but at least they're steel corrals, and that with steel gates, and they're solid. So that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, that's managing and separating the cow herd. And with that, we'll take that conversation and put it out the pasture.